Germany signs the Artemis Accords. There's more information on Russia's UFO crash retrievals and reverse engineering projects. Biosignatures found on an exoplanet, but it's going to take a year to confirm. U.S. Presidents and UFOs. John Greenewald on David Grusch. A new webinar that's just come out on my upcoming webinar. Scientific American becomes a new UFO gatekeeper. An orb causes a U.S. Air Force jet to malfunction. Laser weapons deployed by conventional militaries. U.S. Customs and Border Patrol does a document dump of videos and reports on UFOs.
You are listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla, your source for the uncensored truth regarding the human, extraterrestrial, global, and political agenda. Click the like button and subscribe to this channel. And now, here's Dr. Michael Salla.
Welcome to this week's edition of Exopolitics Today, the week in review. It is Saturday, September 23, and we have quite a few stories to cover. It has been another busy week, so let me go over to my X feed. That's the new way to refer to Twitter now. So I want to bring up this story about Germany just signing the Artemis Accords. So Germany has just become the 29th nation to sign the Artemis Accords. So it is a big deal. Germany is Europe's largest economy, and it is a major space power. Of course, those of you that have been following my work, you know that there is a breakaway space program that was established in Antarctica by Germany at the end of the Second World War that was funded by the Nazis, but it was really run by German secret societies that was successful in reverse engineering flying saucer craft that they had found and that had been given to them. They had both. And they were able to develop these in Antarctica throughout the Second World War. So by the time Nazi Germany capitulated in Europe, the breakaway German program in Antarctica was getting very close to weaponizing their flying saucers. And interestingly, I think there's good reason to believe that the German secret societies withheld that successful weaponization of flying saucers from the Nazis. So because there were many in Germany that believed Hitler was taking Germany to ruin through his reckless policies, and German nationalists actually were opposed to Hitler, as is known through various attempts to assassinate Hitler. Operation Valkyrie comes to mind. And so the Germans in Antarctica had their own breakaway program. They successfully developed it after the Second World War ended in the capitulation of Nazi Germany. They developed that. They went off into space. They became a space power on their own, forged agreements with the United States military-industrial complex. And so that's the kind of hidden history of the development of this German dark fleet. And it is really still dependent on German DNA. You have people, David Paulides has been reporting on a lot of German scientists disappearing in American national parks. And actually German males, German origin males capable of procreating have also been disappeared in the United States. David Paulides has done research on that phenomenon, and I did an interview with him a few months ago where he discusses that. And so what's really going on is that those Germans were being used to kind of like stockpile the genetics of the breakaway German space program. And so Germany is a very important part of not only the NATO alliance, but also of this German dark fleet that was developed in Antarctica. And so by Germany signing the Artemis Accords and becoming part of this new Earth alliance that is coalescing around NASA and around the US military, in particular US Space Command, Germany is signifying that they're going to work closely with the Earth Alliance, which will put pressure on the German dark fleet to also cooperate and not go and not play a kind of rogue role in outer space. So that's a very important development, Germany signing the Artemis Accords. So here's okay, so Jerry Wills, he is a presenter. It's just been announced that he's going to be presenting at the Galactic Spiritual Informers Connection from October 20 to 22. Now, the interesting thing about Jerry Wills is that he was told by extraterrestrials that he was dropped off as a baby to be raised as humans. And I did an interview with Jerry, and that's, again, a couple of months ago. And I told him about this document, and here's the document here. I wrote an article about it a few years ago now. So you can, if you go to my website, exopolitics.org. So here's the full title of the document. So you can just go to exopolitics.org and just type in, or even just do a Google search for new majestic document reveals U.S. diplomatic relations with extraterrestrials. And as you kind of like go through this document, it describes how children or infants were being brought to the United States and they were going to be handed over. And this was part of the program. So what I did in this article that you can find is that I cite from the article various aspects of it, and it discusses the infants that were there. I'm just trying to find that particular passage, but it talks about the infants being left behind, that there was a diplomatic agreement had been reached to share the technologies, that there was a crashed UFO in 1949. The surviving adult extraterrestrial said that they had come to conduct diplomatic relations and that they had come to drop off these babies, these infants, and that this was the way in which the Galactics operate, that they follow this non-interference principle. And this is the way in which the positive extraterrestrials operate, that rather than intervening directly, what they'll do is they'll do things like drop off babies who have the genetics of the extraterrestrials and the knowledge, the information of those extraterrestrials, and it becomes an organic process whereby that culture, our culture, human civilization, is able to incorporate extraterrestrial knowledge and technologies without it being too disruptive, because it's being done through children being dropped off. And Jerry Wills is one of those. So he has a fascinating story. So this is the document. From 1989. It was originally, it's dated from 1989. It was marked ultra top secret, and it came out in June 14, 2017. So 6 years ago. This has been circulating now. So there's a few articles on that, and very interestingly, it says that not only were these extraterrestrial babies dropped off to expedite the United States' development of advanced technologies, reverse engineering, extraterrestrial technologies, but that the same thing would be happening in the Soviet Union. And that is very significant, because it shows that the extraterrestrials that were behind this program of dropping off babies, they understood that the planet was divided at that time in the 40s into these two major blocks, of course, the NATO bloc and the Warsaw Pact led by the Soviet Union. And so because the United States and the NATO countries would benefit from the extraterrestrial technology and the babies, that in fairness to the non-interference principle, that this was also going to be extended to the Soviet Union. So that's a very significant development, and kind of leads directly to this next tweet, where my second interview with Dr. Anton Anfilov has just come out. Well, it came out on Monday. So Monday it came out. And Dr. Anfilov, I mean, this is the second interview, and I've done 3 so far. Another one will be coming out this week, probably on Thursday. And there'll probably be another 1 or 2 that I'll be doing with him, because he has a wealth of information about the Soviet program on the capture and the reverse engineering of extraterrestrial technologies, and how all of that was carried over into the Russian Federation after it was formed in 1991. So in this particular interview, in addition to talking about some more crash retrieval operations in Russia, and I know that some of these crash retrieval operations coincide with the 1949 Aztec UFO incident, where that adult and 3 babies survived, and that they were handed off to the United States to be raised. So the same thing was happening in Russia, according to the extraterrestrial, that they were obliged to do the same thing with the Soviet Union at that time. So Anton Anfilov describes these crash retrieval operations, and also describes some of the key facilities used by the Soviet Union in studying retrieved alien spacecraft. And so this is fairly not well known, not widely known. He describes a facility that's located next to Zhukovsky International Airport, which is outside of Moscow. It's called the M.M. Gromov Flight Research Institute. And he says underneath there is a facility which is very similar in terms of its function to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Now, for those that are not aware, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base has, since its inception in 1947, and previously when it was known as Wright Airfield in the 40s, that those facilities there that currently make up Wright-Patterson have always been the leading Air Force facilities for the study and reverse engineering of foreign aviation technologies. So all of the captured German jets and rockets were brought over to the United States, and especially the jets and any kind of advanced aviation technology were taken to Wright-Patterson for study. So facility at Zhukovsky Airport plays a similar function, has played a similar function throughout its history, but more recently, Zhukovsky has transitioned from being a military airport into a civilian airport. So today you can fly into Zhukovsky as an international airport. And the reason they've done that is that Zhukovsky has, it no longer houses the most advanced spacecraft that are retrieved. That these now go, one is in the Ural Mountains and at a state national park there in the Ural, in the interview, and Novosibirsk. Sorry, apologies to any Russians listening to my pronunciation. So this is Novosibirsk is an aviation plant in eastern Siberia. So that is also a top secret facility for taking some of these craft for study. So Anton Antonov has a lot of information. These facilities in Russia today captured extraterrestrial technology, engineering that's happened, facilities that I've mentioned, and also information about Russia's secret space program. So especially in the third interview that's going to be coming out this Thursday. So you can look forward to that. Okay, next story. Okay, so this is a story concerning the James Webb Space Telescope. They have found a biosignature on a distant exoplanet, and this exoplanet is 120 light years away, and they found a particular particle on this exoplanet, and there you have the exoplanet. They've given it the uninspiring name of K218, and the molecule that they found, which is it only exists in an artificial form on Earth in terms of life creating this, is dimethyl sulfide, or DMS. It's only produced by living organisms. So this is discovery of a bioorganism on an exoplanet. This is the discovery of extraterrestrial life. But what is happening is that NASA is doing a slow roll on this. It's saying that, yeah, we detected something. It could be a biosignature, but we have to confirm. It's going to take us a year to confirm that. So they put it out there that they found something that is only produced by living organisms, which ordinarily would mean that, wow, you've got confirmation, or you've got the discovery of extraterrestrial life on a distant exoplanet. But they're saying it's going to be the result. So this is, I think, kind of like a slow roll, and it makes one question whether this is just part of a kind of ongoing psychological warfare program concerning extraterrestrials and UFOs. I mean, up until 2017, UFOs were dismissed. Now that changed in 2017, and the last couple of years, we've seen a surge in reports, congressional meetings, proposed legislation, and organizations set up by NASA, by the Pentagon, all focusing on UFOs as a national security threat. And so I think we are definitely in the lead up to some major announcement, which will probably involve the deep state trying to depict extraterrestrials as some kind of threat, or that they may be behind these UFOs. So I think this is probably part of that. Okay, so another story. This is a lecture I did. So this is on YouTube. So you can go to YouTube, and I have the link on my Twitter feed. So the Twitter feed link is in the description to this article, or to this week in review. And there it is on the website. You can go there and you'll see this link to this presentation. It was about an hour and a half, and I talk about U.s. presidents and UFOs, how different presidents going back to Roosevelt, Truman, Eisenhower, and so forth, have dealt with UFOs. And so that was done in 2021. It was a virtual presentation for MUFON Orange County, and it's now available for free online. So definitely check it out. Okay, so this is a very interesting article written by John Greenewald, who has done really excellent work with the Black Vault in terms of putting up there, thousands of documents, and I think, thousands or millions of pages now of FOIA releases. So he's done incredible work in putting information on his website that you can go to that have official documents and photographs concerning UFOs. Now, when it comes to David Grusch, however, I unfortunately I have to kind of like say that John Greenewald, who really does great work, I think he takes a very unbalanced approach to David Grusch's testimony. I mean, he received a FOIA response substantiating Grusch's key claim that he'd been cleared by the Department of Defense's Office of Pre-Publication and Security Review to reveal info about UFO crash retrieval programs gained from his military assignments as a liaison to the Navy's UAP task force and its successors. So, even though this was known that he had been cleared by this DOPSA unit within the Pentagon, to actually get documentation confirming that is a big deal because it just supports Grusch's credibility. So I was really surprised in reading the article that Greenewald just kind of like totally ignored that and instead asserted that went on to assert that the released documents beg a more significant question. If the DoD has provided a portion of the material, albeit redacted, why hasn't Grusch shown his requests in full? So, this was really puzzling to me. I mean, because I understand maybe he doesn't think David Grusch's testimony is as reliable as FOIA documentation, which I get that. I mean, he's all into FOIA and he's done great work on that. But I don't think you're doing yourself any favors by taking this unbalanced approach to a key whistleblower like David Grusch, who has excellent credentials, who's worked with some of these very important military units like the NRO and the National Geospatial Agency as a liaison to the Navy's UAP task force and its successors, and kind of like skimming over that as like, well, we know that, no big deal here, and then just focusing on, well, this document that was released through FOIA is redacted, and if David Grusch is serious, is the real deal, well, then he should release the whole thing. I mean, it's his document that he submitted to DOPSA, and that DOPSA approved it for release into the public arena, and I think Greenewald focusing on the versions of that, which predictably the Pentagon did, or DOPSA did, because this is information that is proprietary, or, well, let's just say that it's information that Grusch can release in his own way at his own time, that it's not something that the Pentagon does or DOPSA does. So I think it really is almost unhinged to attack Grusch and say, well, by not releasing the full document that DOPSA released is somehow impinging on your credibility. I mean, that's a real stretch, and to my mind, very unbalanced. And I think this is part of the bigger problem that belongs to not just John Greenewald, but a lot of your researchers focus on documentation. They focus on hard evidence, photos, videos, because they're in search of proof. They want ironclad proof to convince the skeptic. Fair enough. Okay, I understand that. There's a need for that. Bless them. Do that. I think that's wonderful. You do that. But if you do that and you exclude whistleblower and contactee testimonies about the origins of UFOs, ET contact, and the existence of secret space programs, if you ignore that because you say, well, this is all anecdotal, or it's just these people suffer credibility problems, so we can't know for certain, so we're just going to ignore it. What you're doing is you're ignoring the truth that's out there. I mean, the truth is out there. I mean, there's people are interested in proof. Fair enough. Go for it. I think that's important, and I agree you need to do as much as you can. But I also understand that it's never going to be enough. Especially to understand the big picture of who's out there, who's doing what's going on. You have to listen to the whistleblowers. You have to listen to the contactees. You have to listen to the remote viewers. You have to listen to all of these different sources, even though they may not have in your mind the same credibility or degree of accuracy as, say, documents or hard evidence in the form of photos and so forth. But nevertheless, that is what we need to get the big picture, because this is not just a scientific problem. If it was a scientific problem, then you would be absolutely correct that you just go with the proof focus. But it's not a scientific problem. It's a national security. It's a political problem. It has been from the beginning. Everyone knows that. I'm sure John Greenewald would agree with that. This is definitely a political national security issue. And so that means that the evidence is going to be covered up. So you need to look at alternative sources to be able to understand what's going on. And so this means going outside of those kind of like scientific sources and looking at whistleblowers, contactees, remote viewing, and other kind of exotic means of gathering data, and doing something like an intelligence assessment, like the intelligence community looks at different sources of information and grades it in terms of reliability. So you might say, well, a photo, a site, a hidden nuclear site, or say a facility in Russia, we'll give that a 10 out of 10. But an eyewitness of that, something happening there, we'll give that maybe a 5 out of 10. And we'll give a remote viewing of what's underneath that Russian facility a 3 out of 10. Fair enough. Or so you grade it, and then you're able to come up with a accurate picture or a reasonable picture of what's going on, where you can say with a high degree of confidence, Russia has these secret, say, reverse engineering projects at Novosibirsk or in the Ural Mountains, right? So you can do something like that. But if you just rely on proof, you'll have zero, because there's very little on that. So that, I think, is important to keep in mind. Some people are interested in proof. Some other people are more interested in truth. And I think, a bird needs 2 wings to fly. If you take away one of those wings, you know what's going to happen. Right. So, okay. So this is the trailer for my next webinar, which actually is going to come out next week. So in 1 week, Saturday, September 30, you're going to have the webinar on the UFO crash retrievals and secret space programs. So this trailer, this actually I'm narrating it with Angelica, and it was put together by my videographer, Jazz Marlin, who's doing a great job in doing these videos for us. So it goes for 7 minutes. I won't, but it really presents in a kind of like, in a nutshell, what has been going on in terms of the secret crashes and recovery of extraterrestrial spacecraft, reverse engineering, and the secret space programs which have emerged from that, and that way back to Fascist 3 and Nazi Germany throughout the 1930s. So definitely take a look at that if you enjoy that, and then I recommend you webinar. You'll get 4 hours. It'll be probably just over 4 hours of a presentation on this history, not only in the United States and Italy and Nazi Germany, but also in the Soviet Union, China, and other countries that I will be presenting on. So Saturday, September 30, definitely I recommend you sign up for that webinar. Okay, now here's a very interesting story. This is an article by Scientific America, that is finally taking the UFO issue seriously. Now, Scientific American is known for taking its time for acknowledging what Thomas Kuhn calls a paradigm shift. So in the early 1900s, where you had a paradigm shift from flying balloons to heavier than air aircraft, where at first Scientific American dismissed the Wright brothers' claims that they were able to fly a heavy aircraft. That Scientific American quoted credible scientists at the time saying that this was scientifically impossible, that it was believed that this could not happen. But it did happen, and then after a few years of hedging on all of the data, not acknowledging the Wright brothers, Scientific American wrote in and said, oh yeah, well, heavier than air flight exists, and it is scientifically possible after all. So the same thing is happening now with UFOs. After decades of saying UFOs were just conspiracy theory, there's no hard evidence that this is real or anything of great significance. Now, all of a sudden, Scientific American has come on board and is saying that this is something to be taken seriously. Now, the very interesting thing about this is that Scientific American, rather than acknowledging that the UFO researchers that for decades were kind of like these lone voices. I mean, I've been talking about this since 2001, 2002. I've been focusing on this issue, but there have been people going all the way back to the 1960s and 50s talking about this issue, and they were ridiculed. They were dismissed from official positions. They were ridiculed ruthlessly. And so it turns out, of course, that they were right all along, that UFOs are real and they were a national security issue. So Scientific American is acknowledging that. But of course, when it comes to acknowledging that this was an issue that was known to be real going all the way back to the 1940s, but it was covered up by the military, by governments, that is now considered anti-government sentiment. And Scientific American goes on to say that that kind of anti-government sentiment could prove toxic to any factual and scientific discussion of UAPs. So, talk about gatekeeping. I mean, Scientific American, after finally acknowledging after decades that this is a real issue and that UFO and exopolitics researchers were right all along, now Scientific American is saying that, well, this is a real issue. And they, of course, like many others in the mainstream media, date the UFO phenomenon to 2014, to 2004, the USS Nimitz incident where you have the Tic Tac sightings, ignoring all of the data going back to the Second World War, like the Los Angeles air raid, 1942. A crashed UFO is there, and there are leaked documents talking about it, and eyewitnesses talking about that. Ignoring all that, and now saying conveniently, oh, well, that serious UFO research begins from 2004, and anything before that, we're going to ignore that because that's this kind of like unscientific conspiracy theory that expresses an anti-government sentiment, and that's toxic to any factual and scientific discussion of UAPs. And of course, what you have here is gatekeeping, the classic gatekeeping. Scientific American, this is the article, very provocatively titled, UFO research is only harmed by anti-government rhetoric. And the subtitle says, conspiracy theories and relatedly anti-government sentiment could prove toxic to any factual and scientific discussion of unidentified anomalous phenomena. So they want this to be a scientific problem, conveniently ignoring that there are decades of research and data showing that this was a national security issue going back to the 1940s. So by definition, It is a government cover-up. It is a conspiracy theory rooted in a factual government of a real phenomenon. I mean, UFOs didn't just appear as a national security threat in 2004. I mean, that would be ridiculous. So, this is, I think, very clearly the tack that so many mainstream news sites, academic institutions, political organizations are going to take. They're going to say, okay, the UFO issue is real. It's a national security threat. We want to focus on the factual scientific data. Don't talk to us about government conspiracy theories. Don't talk to us about Roswell. Don't talk to us about any kind of reverse engineering programs happening at Area 51. We just want to go with the facts, and the facts are these documents that are being released by the UAE, the Arrow office, and so forth, and NASA using its instrumentations to take pictures of satellites or UFOs. So this is the approach that is going to be taken, trying to make this a scientific problem. And as you well know, this is a national security issue. It's a political issue. It is not a scientific issue only. It is an exopolitical issue. That is a term whose time has come. Extraterrestrials, exopolitics. Exopolitics is about the politics of extraterrestrial life. And so this is something that needs to now be studied as a legitimate national security issue. And of course, I've been doing this work for over 20 years now. Exopolitics is still a term which is a fringe within a fringe. I mean, even a lot of UFO researchers don't want to mention exopolitics because they think that somehow it'll kind of open the door to even kookier conspiracy theories than the kind of mainstream UFO theorists theories. And as I was talking earlier about John Greenewald and others wanting to come up with proof in the form of hard evidence and documentation and photos that show that this is a genuine issue. But if we want the truth, then we need to take a wider approach and look at whistleblowers, look at contactees, look at remote viewing data, look at historical texts and many other sources of information. Okay, so that's my take on this Scientific American article that just came out. All right, so the U.S. Air Force, as reported to the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, AARO, about a 2022 UFO incident involving an orb causing a sensor malfunction to an aircraft operating out of Eglin Air Force Base. Now, the interesting thing about this was that members of the House Armed Services Committee traveled to Eglin and they were given a classified briefing about that particular incident and other UFO incidents. Now, when members of another committee within the US Congress, members of the House Oversight Committee's Intelligence and Security Subcommittee went to Eglin, they were denied access. And so, you have to ask yourself, why in the world would the Air Force do that? Why would you deny access to one group to one committee in the House of Representatives, but grant it to another? What are you trying to do here? And of course, naturally, those people within the House Oversight Committee were very angry at that, and that motivated them to organize the July 26 House Oversight Committee hearings on UAPs. So why is the Air Force taking this approach? Very, very interesting. We can speculate as to, is this just more of an effort of making sure only people that have been given access to classified information know what's really going on, and that way you can, perform the gatekeeping function more easily, as opposed to people learning about this in unclassified formats and then releasing it publicly. So very interesting development. And I know that the House Oversight Committee is going to be doing another hearing sometime, probably October, maybe November. No dates released yet, but there will be one more hearing. And that, I'm sure, is going to be really interesting. Okay, so here we have a story that's on space war, and it describes Raytheon, a space company in the United States. The British Ministry of Defence equipping them with these laser weapon systems in October. So Britain is now going to have laser weapons that it can deploy and use to shoot down things. And so this is open source technology that's been released, and I think it's a fair estimate to say that anything that's released in the open source scientific literature or community, you have classified versions of that date back at least 30, maybe 40, even 50 years. So lasers have been used in classified programs for decades. I know that a lot of these lasers have been used to shoot down UFOs. And that is something that's actually been documented. I think there was a space shuttle incident, space shuttle, but it showed a UFO being targeted by a laser weapon shot from the Earth into space. And it showed the UFO taking evasive maneuvers to evade the UFO. So that, I think, was in that particular incident. I think it was STS-48 from memory. And so that is showing us that these lasers have been used for a long, long time. I know there's also a book talking about the Brookhaven incident. That's when laser weapons were used out of Long Island, New York, to shoot down a couple of extraterrestrial spacecraft, and the craft were retrieved and they were taken away to other places. And it's interesting. What are the origins of these laser weapons? Well, there's documentation that's found that the very first research on laser weapons was occurring in Nazi Germany in the 1940s. There was patents belonging or taken out by I.G. Farben that described the development of the first chemical laser weapons, and that's in the 1940s. So here you are in 2023, the United Kingdom getting its first laser weapon system. So I think that, yeah, this is in the open source, the unclassified world, but when you go into the black world, where you have all of these secret space programs, these laser weapons have been used for decades. Right, so now we have a very interesting document dump. Here's an interview on NBC News about multiple videos and documents that were just released by the U.S. Customs and Border Patrol. It was a document dump, a data dump, no explanation given. And so Christopher Mellon, who's a former Assistant Deputy Secretary of Defense for Intelligence, he was interviewed, and he talked about the significance of these documents. And this is a very interesting interview. You can take a look at it. It shows some of the documentation, some of the UFOs. This is it's showing here the UFO that I think this came out first in 2013. I think it's called Aquadilla in Puerto Rico. An extensive report was written about it by MUFON, detailing the reality, or detailing its flight performance and characteristics. So here's a montage of some of the different UFO videos that were released by Troll. So, why now? Again, I think that this is just part of the conditioning, the psychological warfare to prepare the American and the world public that very soon you're going to have major UFO announcements. And I think the deep state would love a UFO announcement that was predicated on fear and making people scared, and that way they can roll out whatever it is or manipulate the general public in whatever way, whether it's to conduct a major false flag operation, whether it's to come out with very stringent legislation after some kind of UFO contrived false flag operation, something like the Patriot Act that was released after the 9/11 attacks, but something even more stringent where, all of a sudden the UFO issue goes mainstream, and it's like, well, we're under attack from UFOs, and however they spin that. So I think this is part of the conditioning process, because remember, and I think this is part of the military intelligence mind until 2017. So we're talking from 1947, 17, for 70 years. You can actually date it from the 1952 Robertson panel. So from 1952 or 53, the panel convened and a report was issued in 1953. So from 1953 to 2017, you can say that's over 60 years. The American public and the world public have been told that the UFO issue is ridiculous, or that it's not real, it's a conspiracy theory. So you can't overdo or undo 60, 70 years of psychological warfare at the stroke of a pen, which is just one report. You have to educate the public in a short period. And so I think that's what's been happening since 2017. So it's been 6 years now. They're preparing the public of the UFOs being a national security threat. And I think that they're about to roll out the big enchilada, whatever that is, some kind of contrived UFO threat. And I think they're ready to do that. And so this document dump by the U.S. Customs and Border Patrol is a part of that. You can go to the Black Vault. That's the website of that's theblackvault.com. So you can go there, and you will have a full listing of these UAP documents and videos that were released from the U.S. Customs and Border Protection. And so kudos to John Greenewald, who put together the Black Vault, and he puts this information and does excellent research on videos, documentation, FOIA releases that have come out. So the blackvault.com for the full listing of all of these of this document dump by the U.S. Customs and Border Patrol. So something is definitely coming. I think October, November are going to be big months. Things are definitely heating up. As I said, there'll probably be another UAP hearing sometime in October, November. You can tune in for that. There's going to be the UAP Disclosure Act for 2023. That's going to be passed soon. It's on the verge of being passed. So more updates coming up on that. And of course, if you want to get into the history of UFOs, then go to my upcoming website, my webinar on September 30. So that's it for the Week in Review for September 23. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and share this document. It's the way to overcome the censors, especially on YouTube. YouTube does do a lot of shadow banning. So yeah, you just sharing this week helps. So thank you and aloha.
You have been listening to Exopolitics today with Dr. Michael Salla. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Join or start a conversation in the comments. Take the time to explore the vast library of best-selling books, webinars, and podcasts by Dr. Salla. Visit exopoliticstoday.com.